this is where you start. This is where you start.
Can I ask a question? If you're, when you think of something, should you be kind of writing it down so that you don't forget again?
Can I answer that in about 10 minutes?
Sure you can.
Thank you. Because that's going to be a part where we actually talk about how you actually get stuff
Good.
onto the page. Okay, everybody okay with that? Yeah, okay. So here we are. This is how you start. I work with people that say, you know, I need to be coached, I need to work with you to get it out there. Because one of the most wonderful things I've ever been called in my life, and by the way, this literary career as an editor and as a writing coach and a communications person is my 4th career. Yeah. So people say, look, you're either 99 years old or you spent 15 minutes in every career. And I say, you know what, I'm probably older than you think. But this one is about 15 years on this career. And none of them could really hold me. I started in engineering, I went to healthcare and counseling, I went to education. And this one got me. Anybody have ever felt like that? Like, man, I'm a lifer on this one. I'm in for life. Because gosh, there's no end to the learning. There's no end to the options and the opportunities. I still learn all the time. Francie and I were talking about a mutual colleague of ours. And we attended each other's workshops whenever we can, along with a lot of other people. Because you're always learning all the time. It's amazing. So where do you start? You start by doing things like this. You start by finding a tribe. Does that make sense? Because writing, unless you're collaborating with somebody on a project, is a very solitary kind of experience, isn't it? You're basically all alone. You can be somewhere wonderful, somewhere crappy, but you are in a solitary experience. It's not like playing basketball. So what is super important is just what you're doing right now, is finding a tribe of people, connecting with your writing community. And I've got to tell you that come on in, the water is great. The people here who are already involved in the writing community, even just of our area, in this region, know how rich, how diverse, how welcoming and supportive the writing community is. It's just connecting. And that's super important. How many people here are in writing groups? Yeah, me too. People think that the more advanced you become, the more professional you become in your writing, the less you need things like courses and workshops and being in a writing group. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Yeah? Because you're working at deeper and deeper and deeper levels in your work and supporting each other and a really fantastic group that you're critiquing each other's work and working together and supporting each other is the greatest gift you can give yourself as a writer and the greatest gift you can give another writer. So another workshop will talk about critiquing, which is certainly a profoundly important part of the process. So the second thing to think about is where you start is here and also in journaling. Anybody journal? Yeah. People say, oh, I say, do you, whenever I hold classes or do speaking engagements, I say, how many people here write regularly? And then, you know, so I can always tell because people kind of look away and I say, how are you doing? You know, what are you up to? And they say, oh, usually they say, oh, I just write in my diary. And I'll say, well, how long have you been writing in your journal? How long have you been doing that? Oh, about 25 years. I said, holy moly, are you kidding? You are an extraordinary writer. So he said, it's no big deal, it's just a journal. It's just my journal. And I said, oh, yeah, I hear you. And I said, huh. And I said, so how does that just your journal? Like, why just your journal? He said, well, it's no big deal, it's just my little life, and it's nothing. And I said, and they said, oh, you know, I don't really think anybody would be interested in reading it, and all the rest of it. So I want you to think about, what is it, 60 years ago now? A little girl sitting in an attic in the Second World War. Yes. So you know what I'm talking about. Do you think when her parents gave her her journal, a blank journal to write in, that they were thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be so cool. In 60 years she will have changed the world in uncountable ways. This 11-year-old little girl. Do you think anybody was thinking that? No, absolutely not. So in one of the blog posts I wrote in the spring, I talked about your writing in Lifestory Memoir, and we will talk about what the difference is in a sec, is like literally, I didn't make this one up unfortunately, is a pebble in a pond. Every time you share in some way a life story, it's like literally throwing a pebble in a pond. So anybody ever done that? In a body of water, a contained body of water? Did you stop to see where every single ripple that came out of that pebble, where and when it touched something? Did you stop and wait for that? Mostly no. It just goes on and on and on until we probably can't see them anymore, but there is still the movement just below the surface. You're following my metaphor here, I'm sure. We don't know where that ripple is going to touch and when. We may be super lucky, like I was in the spring, and I'll share that with you in a second, to get evidence of how important what we say on the page is and how important it is to share that. We don't know. We can have a good idea. We do need a focus when we're looking to have that material published in something. So you have a pebble in a pond and a ripple touching someone somewhere at some time. It may not even be in your lifetime, you just don't know. So does that make sense, Henry? Yeah. It's not dramatic, it's very real. Very real. Because if you think about it, have you been touched by something that somebody wrote?
Yeah.
Is there anybody in this room that hasn't? I doubt it. Yep. So I'm going to share with you very quickly about that, what can happen. The Fisher Queen, if you're familiar with this is a literary memoir that was published in September of 2012 by Heritage House. And it is what I call the little story, big story. That's what in memoir, is what I call little story, big story. So even of all the people that have done spectacular things, guess what? What they did is just the little story in that memoir. Do you know what the big story is in every memoir, or should be? It's the bigger picture. It's the big story that was going on around your story, your life event. Does that make sense?